So hello everyone, welcome again. And today we are going to cover the entire project hospital management system development. So the project is already built, and I'm going to explain you the way we are going to perform the file structure and how all the things are working. So if you are already familiar with the basic Java development, Java web development tutorial, then it will be easy to understand you this. Or I will suggest you to cover all the 19 or 20 video in our Java web development tutorial series. So once you have that basic knowledge about the file structure and the working, then it will be easy to understand the complete source code of this project. So let's start quick and see how the things are working over there. So at the very first, I'm gonna tell you something about the MVC architecture. So architecture is something like the way of programming, or you can say we are working on, say like we are working on a land and we need architecture to build a particular house or something. So the architecture is a way of programming. Similarly, we are using MVC architecture. So we can divide MVC architecture in three parts. Let me open my notepad. So we can divide MVC architecture in three parts. One is model, view, and controller. So the model will be always responsible for the database. So any kind of database transaction will come under the model, and the view part will be responsible for the front end, and the controller will be responsible for the server side. So what are these front end, database, and the server side here? So front end means the HTML, CSS, all the designing for whatever the user or client can see at the front end. Like you can see the heading here, the buttons, and the input box, and this is come under the view part. And then view part is going to communicate with controller. It means servlet, so server side programming. So in our case, we have server side programming as a servlet, and then it's going to send the request to database. So database will come with a MySQL, or the query will be written into Java, simple Java language. Then again the same process will repeat, and like this will be your request. Again servlet send a request to MySQL, and whatever the response will generate from the MySQL or database, it will send response to again servlet, and then servlet send that response to HTML, CSS, and JSP. So JSP is a server programming page, and it is also used for front end as well as for server side. So JSP has this capability that JSP can handle the controller or server side request. So if I talk about the structure of MVC, it will be like view to controller, controller to model, again model to controller. So, and the same request will be moved like model to controller. So this is the response, and then view. I hope this is clear to you. Now let's move to the project structure. So here in the project structure, we are using Maven. As you already know, if you are already done with the previous videos or Java web development series, you already know what is Maven and what is MVC, all the things. I'm just repeating this to revise everything according to this project. So Maven is a project build tool. You can say the project configuration tool that's going to manage our dependency. So whatever the dependency or third party APIs we are using, we are going to manage them into the our pom.xml. So pom.xml is auto-generated file by the Maven, and for example here we are using MySQL, so we have dependency of MySQL, and Java, we have dependency of Servlet, Java Mail, and all the dependencies are there. So where can you see this dependency? Just open this Maven dependency, you can see all the RAR files. Let's see the magic. If I'm gonna remove this code, and the project is going to build now, and you can see the dependency will remove from here. Now you can see the MySQL is not there now. If I add the code again and I just save it, project is going to build again, and it will add a dependency there. So it is path independent. The first thing, if you're gonna import this project and any other machine, you don't need to worry about the dependencies. Form will automatically build on that machine and add the dependency there, so it's not going to fail our code. Other thing is we are using MVC architecture, so we have controller here as a controller package, so all the servlets will come here. So how there are lots of controllers, so it is according to the models that we are using, modules that we are using in the project. For example, if I have a login module, so there should be a one view file for the login and one controller file for the login, and all the, like, it's related to the user model. So all the user activity like login, registration will come under the user controller. Similarly, we have other package model that contain all the database transactions. For example, if I talk about the user model, so this user model class, this is simple Java classes. So this class will contain all the code, that's all the methods that are going to help us to perform database transactions. Also we have the very important util package here. So data utility, I have already the separate video on this data utility. So it's going to be conversion to the data validator is going to validate our data. You can watch the previous video if you have still some some confusion there. Email builder and JDBC data source, this is going to provide to, this is going to use to get the connection from the database, and the property reader is going to read our property files, and the servlet utility will help us to forward and redirect the request. So I have a separate video on this, all these classes in detail, so you can watch the previous development tutorial series, and if you don't have that, you can ping me, so I will allow to access that. Okay, so utility is done. Now in the bean, so what is the bean here? Bean is a user, like bean is a getter setter. So if a user has a multiple property, or any module can have multiple properties, like user have a first name, last name, login, password, confirm. So we are going to just set and get the values, so whenever we are going to create an object, it will be easy to um, handle all the properties in one object. That's why we are using getter setter here. Also, we have configuration file under the resource. So this configuration file is our system.property that we are going to use, that we are going to read via the property readers. So it contain all the validation message. It contain all the validation messages, our database transaction URL, driver, username, password. In case you need to change the database configuration, you can make changes here. Okay. And next thing, JRE is our Java version that we are using. So in our case, we are using Java 1.8. Let's come to the SRC. As under the SRC, we have main, and under the main, we have this main folder. So these are for the designing purpose. So assets, it means some images, some logo. These all the things will come under the assets folder, and just leave this color and all. This is using to add some custom colors or custom body images there. But if I talk about the CSS, this is the designing CSS. As you know, if you are familiar with the CSS, CSS is going to use for designing purpose, and doctors they have some specific mental like we can delete it, like it's not required here, so we can delete the doctor. Font size, if I talk of the images, so all the images that we are going to use in the project is going to come under this image package. JavaScript, so all the JavaScript and bootstrap libraries will come under this. And the JSP, so the JSP, like we can write the HTML code under the JSP as well. So this is our JSP that's going to write the HTML code. We are going to write the HTML code here, and we are going to process in send the request by this view too. So this is your view, and these all are the supported file for this view. And if I talk about the web here you will get a web.xml. So here will be your welcome file. So it's login controller. So now let's run the code and understand how the flow is working there. So if I'm going to log in, going to click on run and server, automatically we have set the welcome file as a login controller. It will send the request to the login controller, and the request will go to login controller. So let me run it. So the server is going to start now, and its initialize is complete. Everything is fine now. So in the web XML, as we said, will welcome file as a login controller. So it will come over the login page. You can see here. But as I said, login controller is a servlet file or is a controller, but it's showing a view part here. You can see it's a view and it's currently on login controller. So how it's happening? So just move to the login controller. Whenever we call any servlet without define any method, by default the request will go to do get method. So if I talk about the login controller, the request will come to do get method, and here we have multiple checks, but in this case, initial case, it will not get any check, like it will not stuck under any if condition or else condition. Directly it will come here and forward the request to get view. So what is this get view? So get view has a method here that's going to pass a view page. So it's passing the message to login view page. So what is this login view page? So if I talk about the login view page, should be there. No, not there. Login view. So login view page is a URL of our login view JSP. So indirectly, when we call login controller, by default it will redirect on the login view page. This is the login view page, and so login view page means login view.jsp means it will redirect to user to this page. Okay, now we are on this page. So keep in mind, I'm gonna explain you one module very clearly, login and registration process, and then all the modules will work in the same way. So just keep eye on the very carefully, and then like the main operation, main target to complete the project is CRUD operation. So create, delete, insert, and update the data. So this is the main target of any Java web application development. So once you will understand this thing, you can understand all the project very easily. So let's come to the point and the login view. Right now you are in the login view and you need to send a request. So as we have already seen in our previous videos, we have a HTML form here. This is the start from the action, and it will send the complete data to login controller. Again login controller, but this time it's going to specify the method as a post. And here before closing of this form, we have a submit button that's going to register as a user. Oh, sorry, login as a user. So the login button is the login. So this is one input as a login ID. This is one input field, and this is the second input field, and then we have the submit button here as a login. So it has a value as a, so from where this value will come, this text will coming here as a sign in. So this, we are managing this under the login controller. So if I move to the login controller, at the top we have some operation like you can see, op logout means logout, op underscore sign up means sign up, op underscore sign in sign in. So we are just calling this variable and there as a value. So login controller dot op dot sign in. So when user click on this button, the data will come from this input field, and this input field in form of like login ID equals to the, it is the name of this field and here is the name of this field. So data will goes to in the form of request, and this request will hit to the servlet. On which servlet it's going to be hit? It's going to be hit to login controller. So now the request will go to login controller. Let it sets to send the data to do get to post method. So it's going to hit now here. So like now we are going to verify the operation. So you can see the operation will come from there as a op.sign-in is equals to op, like the top. So when if user click on the sign in button, then the operation will come as a sign in, and if this is equal, then this code is going to execute under this, whatever the code under this, if it's going to be executed. So what exactly we need to do now, whatever the data will coming from the in the form of request, we need to get the data, and then we'll move to then pass the data to the model, and model will verify the data the user is available or not in the database, and generate a response accordingly. Then we send that response to model to controller, and pass that response controller to view. But if you can see here, we have so if you can see here, we are getting the request data as a operation. So the operation will come here an op, and we are validating this operation here. Other thing, we have an object of user model. Obviously we need to create an object of our user model to communicate with the data models. And then we have role id that's not in use right now, but here if you see, we are calling the populate bean and pass the compute request there. So what is the this populate bean coming from the top? You can see we have a method here as a populate bean. So this method is going to take a request in a response form, a variable in a request form, and we have a very object of user bean which will come from the beans. So now we are going to set the data to user bean. So bean dot set id and the login and the password. So from the front end, the three data is coming in the request form: id, login, and password. We just set it in the user bean, and it's going to populate an object of user bean. Also here we just call that populate bean, and whatever the request will come from the front end, we will pass that request here. Also populate beans want to request, so all the request will redirect here and it will generate a response. So we have a user bean object here. Now we need to call that authentication method, so that we have already created object of user model. So this model dot authenticate is going to call and pass the username and password as an argument. It will going to return a bean object. Bean object means the other data of the database of that particular user. If user logged in successfully with username password, then it will return all the other details of the user in the form of bean object. Now let's move to the authentication method and check how it's going on. So authentication method in our user model, and it's going to string login and password as an input. It's going to fire a query, select a string from user where login to this and password is this. We are going to set the front end login and id, login and password there. We are going to execute the query, and here whatever the response you will get from the database will store into the result set, and then we create an object of user bean and set all the values, and it will return a object of bean. The same object is going to get here. Now what if user is logged in successfully? It means bean is not null. Then we are going to create a session of that user. To create a session, already we have discussed that on the topic in detail. So we have created a session here, and then if everything goes fine, then it will redirect user to the welcome controller. Otherwise it will add a message invalid login and password, and it will redirect to user if logged in successfully, it will redirect to the welcome controller. It means the next page. Otherwise it will redirect to user to the view page. So in our case, what is the view page? It's login view. So again it will redirect on the login page. So it will work like, if I'm going to enter some invalid username password, it will automatically redirect on that page and send this message invalid login and password, this message to the front end. So let's move to the login view. So whatever the request we are going to set from the login controller is invalid, you can see servlet utility set error message. So we need to get that error message here. So at the top we are going to get that error message. This is showing in the red color, and if logged in successfully, it will show in the green color, right? So this is the process of login. So in that login process, also if the user is going to log in with a valid username password, it will redirect to the welcome page. So the other condition will be true. So I'm going to enter a valid username password here. So I'm going to log in, and you can see it's redirecting on the welcome controller. So now the login is done. It means we are going to retrieve the data. We already done with the process of retrieving the data and deleting the data, retrieving the data, select the data, and now we are going to work with the registration process. So you will be easily understand to add the data, and I think you already done with update and delete data in the previous videos. So let's move to the registration. So if I see what is the, so if you are going to understand the code and monitor the code, just focus on the view, view and the file structure there. So if the file is related to like login, it will come with the login view. It means the front page. List, it means display the data of users. So it's using doctor list. It means it will display data in the table form. Okay, so so we have different multiple pages for the login. So for example, registration receptionist view, it means it's going to registration page for the reception, and the patient view, it means the registration page for the patient, and receptionist list view, where it is receptionist list view, it means it will show the data in the list form. So let's move to the reception view. Again, it's a registration page. So for example, if I'm gonna log in from here and I'm gonna click on sign in, okay, it's going to sign in by admin, and I'm gonna go to receptionist and click on the add receptionist. So if I see here, it will come again input form. So again we'll create the same form format, HTML form, and then send request to the post method. So if we see, that's going to be start. I want to see the form now. Okay, so form start from here, and all the data will send in the form of the request. When user going to click on the save option and name as a operation, the data will go to a receptionist controller. So here the receptionist controller, that is, just go to controller and check the receptionist controller. It will hit to the do post method. So now you have seen two method there, the populate bean, that's going to the same role that we have done with the request and the login, and another method we have here that's going to validate our data. which is validate. So whatever the data will come in the form of request, the data will come into the validate method. Will call the data and validate here. Like you can see here, data validator dot is null. So we are going to verify the first name should not be null here. If it is null, then it will return a false value. So we can show the error message over there accordingly. Similarly, we are going to verify the first name, last name, login, password, and all the fields that coming from the front end. Also, we have populate the beam in form of object. So if I go to do post method, in this case, we are going to create in the same format. We are going to create a user bean object, and we calling the populate and pass the request there. And then if we try, if that id is greater than 0, it means we are going to register in the application. Let me check. Okay, so here and this like if id is greater than the 0, but we are going to perform the registration operation, so id will be, so then the id will be not greater than 0, so the condition will execute in the else part. So model dot add, we are going to add method from the model and pass that complete bean object that comes from the populate bean. And if I'm going to add method, in this add method we are going to insert the data into the database. So let's fire the query accordingly and return a primary key. If the user is registered successfully, it will return a key, a value as a 1, otherwise it will return as a 0. So let's move to the receptionist controller, and we have the primary key. So if user successfully logged in, it means then it will send a message that data is successfully saved and forward to user to the get view. Similarly, in this page also we have a method, simple methods, get view, which will contain a view part, receptionist view, which will come from the HMS view. So HMS is our, again HMS is our interface that's going to manage over all the URLs. Okay, fine. If user is not successfully logged in, it will send an error message and redirect on the error page view. So this all the data, they are going to set the request, again move to the view, receptionist view, and it's going to set get the method, get the response, and going to print it on the front page. Now we are add the data. So similarly, in the same way, you can add a doctor, you can add a patient, you can add an appointment. So now let's come to the receptionist list, how the data is coming there. So this time we have to check the list view, you can see here, but this data will coming from the form of response. So we have to perform the reverse engineering here. Let's go to the controller list. At the very first, just move to the model and check the receptionist controller. Where is the receptionist controller? Here it is. So in the receptionist controller, and just move to the do get method. In the do get method, if you can see, we create an object of user model, and where is the id set operation? Okay, operation get list. Okay, in the receptionist list controller, it should be there. In the do get method, we exactly need a list. So we create an object of user model, and we are going to get a list from the model. So I'm just searching for the model object here. Okay, okay. So okay, we are going to search the user and pass the bean and page number and the size. So Indirectly in the model we have a search method. This is going to retrieve all the data from the database. So just move to the search. So this search is going to we are going to fire a query accordingly, like first name, last name or something. So user can search by any purpose and send the data and it will return a list. This list going to be displayed the front end. So now we have list in this bean and we are going to set the list as a request, and this request will goes to controller to front end. So where's the front end here for this? So for the receptionist list we have front end here, and in this designing part we just create a table. You can see it's contain a table, and in this table we are firing a, that is the loop. Okay, here is the loop. So this is the table structure and we are just going to serial number, name, email id as the table headings, and then whatever the data will be set as a request, we'll call it now here as a response. So servlet utility dot get list, there we have set the list. Now we are getting the list, so the servlet utility dot set list, and we call the request form, and then list dot iterator. Now we want to iterate the data from that list, so we put a loop here while it dot has next, and being it dot has next. It means until it has data, the loop is execute and will print the data here from the list. So in this way we can print the data at the front end. So whatever the data you can see here. So how the search is working over there? For the search, as we have performed the login operation, we are using the same form technique. You can see there is a form. Again it will go to the reception list page, post page, and will check the things and update. So this is the complete project. In the same way you can perform the patient list, doctor list, and the reception list and all the things. So this is an overview and code flow about the hospital management project in the Java web development and the JSP and Servlet. So hope it will be clear to you. In case if you have any question, you can ping me, or you can ping me, and make sure I know this things is very complicated and will come from the after some experience. So before starting this, make sure you have a knowledge of JSP, servlets, how responses go and responses when, and HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, JavaScript, Maven, MVC architecture, JDBC API, JDBC data source. Lots of things are required. So if you are fresher, and my aim to show this, like how the things is merge, like if you have a knowledge of multiple technologies, but how can they come together and build a product in the market. So this is the my name, so don't be panic, just go one by one and after some time you will be able to develop this kind of application. If you want to join us, you can ping us, you can subscribe over to the YouTube channel, and you can join our courses, and that courses you are going to develop an application by your own. So my team will guide you, so that will be paid courses obviously, so you have to pay for it and you can learn it like this. So thank you.